An animation plays with words coming in from different directions, reading National Council on Independent Living Oral History Project, founding member Colleen Starkloff on the conversations that started Nickel.
Here's what happened. When we got our funding in 79 from the Title VII funding, Max and I, Max really, but was our idea. Max reached out to Marga Bristow in Chicago with Access Living. She was starting a center there, also one of the first 10 federally funded. And then we decided that we should bring all of the first 10 centers together to start talking about the regulations, how they'd be implemented, all this sort of stuff. But while Max and I were getting up at the Holiday Inn C Street while we were in the process of getting all this funding organized, we said, it's looking good that we're going to have this funding available. We should really start an organization of centers so that the centers could all come together and work together with each other. What are you doing? What's working? What's not? How are you implementing? And at that time, there weren't even regulations for what a center should look like. But what are you going to do? Some of the first centers were funded through Voc Rehab in their state. Voc Rehab applied for the funding and then gave it to a group in their state. We were directly funded by RSA. So there were different funding mechanisms. And we're like, if we're going to survive as an entity for independent living, we need to create an organization that supports us and that also becomes a really powerful advocacy voice for the policy decisions that really need to happen in Washington and in the states, so that the centers could activate policies in their states, but that we'd all collaborate on the ideas that would make independent living more robust and more successful and more sustainable. So anyway, Max and I were getting up and we said, we need to create this national organization and we can do it through the 10 centers. We got up and we went down to the hotel restaurant to have breakfast, and we called Marka and said, hey, Marka, meet us in the restaurant. We've got an idea. And so Marka did, and we're sitting there and she said, oh yeah, we should really do that. And then we said, let's get Lex. Lex was in the hotel too, because we're still meeting about the regulations around independent living. And so we'd already gotten the funding, but we were working on the regs. And so we got Lex and said, Lex, we got this idea. And Lex said, yeah, that's a great idea. Lex had already started the Center for Independent Living in Houston through the Texas Institute for Rehabilitation Research. So he was a key player. We wanted to make sure that he was on board with this idea. We reached out to the 10 original Title VII funded centers and said, we'd like to invite you to come and have a meeting in St. Louis. And let's start mapping out all these issues, the regulations, the implementation of the regulations. There were people calling for IL standards. Maggie Shreve in Kansas City with Whole Person was calling for regulations and standardization. And we're like, I don't know if we really want to be too standardized, because this is something that needs to grow and not be hobbled by having to have only these certain standards that you should have as a center. But anyway, the 10 centers got together in St. Louis. It was in 1980, June or July of 1980. Our daughter, Megan, was an infant. She was there at the meeting in a little bassinet. But out of that meeting came the idea to meet on a regular basis, and different of the centers would host meetings.